Hey guys, we'll talk about MDIA. This week is the week of market open longs. And glad to see that multiple people in my short Discord room hitting this long. Really great to see. Some people even hit the second long. I was afraid of hitting the second long off the 1 minute 50 with the lower high paint, just because um, the higher something goes, the less likely long patterns like this, short trap into the 1 minute 50 into the rotation, the less likely they are to work. So I was afraid to hit that. But this chart was amazing. I mean, there's so many interesting things happening with this play. The first one was the 70% pullback from pre-market highs. So we had this massive walk down, and um, usually when a stock, I do like when stocks are walked down into the open, right? These tend to be some of the best longs. The only issue I had with this one going into market open was the fact that in the pre-market it went up about 280% or something. And usually when something already makes a big move like that, you're talking multiple hundreds of percent. Even if it's walked down in the open, it's usually weak. So I wasn't thinking market open long on this. Um, but a couple things we need to know about market open longs. A, super walk down into market open, and then the volume. Volume is always the most important factor when it comes to market open longs. Um, and this is a great example of just super bullish market open volume, right? We have 500K on the 931 candle, I think, into 600K, into 1 million, into an uphaul, into 2 million out of the uphaul. So you're talking massively increasing volume. Doesn't mean it's always going to, do some massive squeeze, but it's a requirement. Um, uh, in most cases, it's a requirement for short trap rigging, right? So this was pretty interesting, right? High day was all the way at like 4.7s with a bunch of lower highs at 4.5. This is still pretty low. This was in the mid threes. Still had a lot of room to run, especially with the bullish volume, right? So, I see a flat top here, and then something I always try to, one of the main lessons I try to teach in the Discord about going long is the fact that in low floats, the long in most cases, is after the knife, right? You get these knife moves, and then the long read you're making is after the knife happens. So usually there's two parts. One is some type of retail pattern. So we have a downtrend breakout, right? See this big green candle? So it's a clean downtrend. You can draw the trend line. Any retail trader could draw the trend line. It's holding at VWAP, common retail support level, and then you get a big volume breakout to the upside. This is never, in most cases, never a good time to go long, right? What you want to do, and there's certain exceptions, like sometimes stocks get walked down to the 1 minute 20, the 1 minute 50. There's certain walk down patterns, like we've covered 1 minute 20 walk downs on this channel a lot. Um, and usually the way 1 minute 20, patterns work is you get a big volume push, and then you usually get some type of violent pullback to the 1 minute 20, and it does something like that, right? But in this case, I was looking at the 1 minute 20, but the 1 minute 20 was down here under VWAP, so I was like, all right, there's VWAP support, and they're rotating it. I don't want to long that. And then the knife comes on big volume, right? So it's trading really nice volume. Um, and what's some things we know about this? We know that this is another lower high, right? A lot of these initial long trap type candles have potential to turn into a short trap if they throw up the bids, because that long trap candle now becomes another lower high for this to possibly rotate through, right? So I knew the volume was there. I knew the stock was massively walked down. I knew it had higher to squeeze. And we got a potential short trap candle. And I called this out in my Discord right away. I was like, potential short trap. And what I actually thought might happen was I thought they were going to swipe VWAP and then rip it. That'd be very common because the 1 minute 20 was still right under VWAP. So maybe swipe VWAP to the 1 minute 20 then push. But this is an example where the book comes into play and you could see the bid stacks come in on the book. And I just made a decision to go long there. Um, essentially risking a VWAP crack and maybe getting back in if it's soaked off the 1 minute 20. But I knew the volume was there. I knew this was a potential short trap candle. I sell some into the push. And the range on this is so massive that like here to here is like a 15 to 20% move. It just doesn't look like it. And then it just went straight to high day, and I didn't even pretty much don't even have time to sell because of how aggressive this squeeze was. And it locked. I sold some out of the unhaul, and then I actually just sold the rest when a bunch of big bids started getting sold into. And that's the only reason I did that was because a lot of times I actually think it's quite bearish when a stock does nothing but higher low into a big squeeze, just like higher low, higher low, higher low, higher. The more aggressive something is, the less support I tend to think the stock has. But the second structure is really interesting. Like I said, I didn't really want to long here because this type of pattern, the higher something goes, tends to work less. But I didn't want to short here, and the reason I didn't short here is because something I noticed on these pullbacks, right, is that I'm starting to measure the space in between high a day and the lower high. And we talked about this on the previous videos. What was it, VVPR, where I mentioned midday. The stock went up to 7.3. It lower high at 6.5, and then it squeezed later. And I mentioned that video that there's very little trading between the lower high at 6.5 and high day at 7.3, right? So you essentially have 10% of space that essentially very little shares got traded, and on the order book tends to also be quite empty. So when it rotates, it tends to be really aggressive, right? It tends to, if there's too much space in between these two levels, I notice you tend to get really big squeezes, right? So I actually wasn't thinking short here, even though this is your classic fake 5-minute flag, right? This is the 1 minute 50, lower high, lower high, lower high. And a lot of this is kind of a case by case basis. But I thought the volume in this thing was kind of nutty, kind of big. I thought the fact that this did a pre-market high day clear out and then instantly dump. So you do have the high day clear out short trap. From here, you got the empty space from here to here, and you got the aggressive pullback here, right? So like, there's a lot of bullish factors kind of adding up to this. And I kind of wanted to avoid these plays where you get these aggressive rotations through empty space that's like more than 10%, right? So I didn't short this. They threw up bids immediately, and I didn't want to long it because, like I said, I thought maybe they would, maybe soak and maybe it'll come back down, or maybe it'll take, another 20, 30 minutes of doing some choppy thing, but instead they just rotated it right away. But yeah, shout out to my Discord room. And then I actually was not at my setup for this trade, but this is your classic backside clear out, right? So you'll also notice like there's also a lot of empty space here, like between this lower high and this high day. There's a lot of empty space to rotate, which is true. The only thing to consider is that this already did like 1 big push, 2 big push, 3 big push. The more and more extended something gets, the more likely the stock is going to run out of liquidity, and the more likely painted levels like this you could take trades like this, especially if we start to see backside book action where there's minimal bid follow up, and ask are getting filled, ask are getting filled, ask are getting filled, and they pull it. Um, so yeah, we'll look at thinkorswim super fast. Here's the big volume. You know, 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, right? Walk down, retail breakout, you knife, and I don't like the long into the knife right away because I did think they might swipe maybe this like 320 level, bring it down to 315 and then rotate it. But instead they just fouled it up with bids, big squeeze, same pattern this time to the 1 minute 50, big squeeze. So we'll look at the book really fast. A lot of interesting stuff on the book. So, oh, here's a little trick. We talked about this with shorts. This also happens with longs, where, so here's that initial retail push, at 950. No bids following it up. They knife it, and look at this. They threw up a 50,000 share ask here to force the stock down. And once it starts catching the bids that have now been put under there, they pull the ask, right? So in this context, the ask getting pulled on a potential short trap pattern is very bullish, right? Not every ask that gets pulled is bullish, but it's in the context of the lower highs, in the context of the volume, in the context of these bids, especially near market open, we're still in that 9:30 to 10 a.m. type of range. It's really bullish, right? And then I started, I let this, I saw the first bounce, I saw the mini second bounce, and I just decided to go in right away because I saw the ask get pulled, I saw the empty space at upside, and I was like, all right, maybe they're not going to swipe VWAP because of how many bids are down here. And they just started ripping it. I got out when these bids were getting taken out over here. Yeah, look what they did. Huge walk down until some 1 minute. Here's the 1 minute 50 bids. All this empty space starts to rotate through this empty space. I just thought they were going to play games, right? But yeah, here's the second short trap move, right? $5 clear out, no bid follow up, back down to the 1 minute 50. And after this bid held, I saw this rotate, and I saw this mini bid come in, and I was like, oh man, this it might go. But I just didn't want to chase. And then yeah, here's the backside clear out. So anytime on these crazy high volume stocks I see big down only like this, I just assume there's going to be some backside move. Sometimes things go straight down though. We've seen stocks go straight down before. But yeah, a big thing we learned about backside moves, especially midday, is look how long this took. This knife candle was at 11:10. The backside clear out was at 12:20, right? I mentioned in previous videos that about 45 minutes to an hour and a half is a very common, time frame in terms of, setting up higher lows, higher low, higher low, higher lows, and executing some type of midday liquidity move, right? That's about the length of time it takes. And look what happens. They higher low it, they do the liquidity move, they actually hold the higher lows for another 20 minutes, and then they do the unwind, right? Sometimes things don't crack right away, but as long as the stock is not showing strength, and especially if new asks start to come in, it's very bearish. I just didn't want to. You could one of the few times where chasing might have been a good idea here, but I just didn't want to do it. But yeah, we'll look at that backside move really fast. So big pullback. Like I said, midday, you have to be really patient with how long these plays tend to take, right? They tend to take a while, right? You can't, it's very easy to FOMO trade, the 25% pullback down only, right? But just pay attention to where the lower highs are. Pay attention to where the $half hold dollar levels are, and then pay attention to, see if there's any things like higher lows forming. That's potentially bearish on the backside. And then pay attention to ask at levels where, especially at these backside levels where they actually like to fill those asks. They fill the ask and then they pull it, right? That's a very common backside trick. And then yeah, look at this. Remember how on the long they pulled the ask? Look at this. They put up this was a 100,000 share bid. 100,000 share bid touches $6. They start to they look at they restack it and pull this, right? And they pull the bid. And look, you actually had some time here to react to this. I wasn't at the setup until a little later. My daughter came home, and I was hanging out with her. But this was a solid 20 seconds here. You could see that the ask, the $6 ask got filled. You could see them restack it, and you could see them pull the bid. And again, this bid getting pulled, well, they technically moved it way lower, but I wouldn't care. That to me, this is such a solid liquidity move that any bid that was holding up in the top of this range, if that bid gets pulled, I would definitely want to get in. And then yeah, look, it just went sideways with no buying. New ask comes in, and they just started pushing us down. So nice backside liquidity move. So yeah, shout out to the people in the room. All these short sellers in my room going long. It's great to see. It's great, especially on plays like this where, shares might be expensive depending on your broker, and it helps a lot if you learn how to grab some of these, 15 to 30% moves on the long side. There's a lot of brokers nowadays that offer free commissions too, so the fees are pretty much non-existent, and you don't have to pay 3-4% for shares of a stock that you have, in borrowing fees, and then you have to hope a pattern happens, and then you have to hope that pattern works, and you have the right, it's nice to expand your long playbook, especially if market open longs are working and the volume is there and low floats are, making some nice moves in the pre-market and market open. And there's plenty of days. There's multiple days this week where, I'll miss a short just because in this case I wasn't at my setup, but there's plenty of days where the long was the only thing I made money on, like today, right? So, what do you call it? I don't have to worry about, paying a bunch of that's how I used to be. I used to just pay a ton of money in borrows every year, and every day I would just have to hope I could, make, money to get my borrowing fees back and then make some profit on top of that, and only short and never long. And, it's nice that I don't have to do that anymore, right? And a lot of that just came from studying what happened with my long, because I used to short these like every single time, these like low pops every single time, and I would study the ones that didn't work, and then I got the book and combined, multiple things together, and this has, been my best year going long by far, right? Just so many nice longs. And now, borrowing fees. There's some plays where, there's plays this week where I just didn't even have borrows, like TCBP. Didn't even have borrows, and I just made all my money long on it. So 100% profit, right? So, which is nice. It's nice not having to worry about it. So, anyways, that's it for today. Information down below about the Discord. I'm gonna do I do a weekly recap on my Patreon. If you sign up for my Patreon, you'll actually get access to all my previous weekly recaps. I was busy last weekend, so I actually didn't do one last weekend, but I have like 9 or 10, pretty much every single week of 2024 is on there, where you can, they're about an hour long, and they're videos like this, but a little more in depth, and they kind of go over, trading as a whole, so long and short. So, you'll be able to watch that, and you'll be able to watch I post it in the afternoon on Sunday. But yeah, you'll be able to watch it if you sign up for the Patreon, and you'll get access to the Discord. So anyways, that's it for today. You guys have a good one, and have a good weekend. See ya.